Very, very excited to be speaking on a topic that I'm very, very passionate about, which is, of course, this theme of employee experience. And I'm actually working on a new employee experience book, which will come out next year. So I'm in the process right now of interviewing over 100 chief human resource and people officers at companies around the world. So I'm getting a lot of really interesting insights on what's happening now and also what's coming next in the realm of employee experience. And some of that is what I'm going to tease a little bit today, just to give you some insights around what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing from the various leaders that I'm talking to. So I think to set this stage, one of the things that I'm always really interested in is what is it that sets up some organizations from being different from the others? For example, if you look at the airline industry, you look at hotels, you look at pretty much any industry you want, there are always some companies in that industry which seem to have better customer experiences. Some companies which seem to out-innovate their competitors. Some which seem to have higher profitability. But they're in the same industry. They offer virtually the same type of product as their competitors. So what are they doing that sets them aside from their competitors, even though they have almost an identical product? They're in the same industry. It's almost the same company size, and they're serving the exact same customer. Yet one company seems to be far away ahead than everybody else. And one of the things that I discovered as I was doing research on employee experience for my previous book on this, I came across a psychologist, a researcher by the name of Gilovich. And he did some really fascinating research on how our satisfaction is impacted depending on if we purchase a physical good or if we purchase an experience. So a physical good, for example, like this iPhone here. If you buy a physical good, what happens over time is your satisfaction goes down because you get used to it. You know, like I loved this new iPhone when I bought it, but it's been a year or two, and now, my satisfaction has gone down. I don't have that same level of excitement as I did when I first purchased it. And this is true across the board, regardless of what the product you buy. Your satisfaction over time will go down. However, if you purchase an experience, what starts to happen is over time, your satisfaction goes up. And it's because you think about that experience, you share pictures, you talk about it, you reminisce. When you're with friends and family members, you share that experience. And so the more you think about it, the more you talk about it, the more memories you have from it, the more positively you tend to think about that experience. And what I realized is that the world's top companies, they approach their employee experience as if employees just purchased an experience instead of a transaction. So in other words, for a lot of companies right now, when you start working there, it's very transactional, right? You show up to work, you sign some paperwork, first day on the job, meet some people, go to a couple meetings, blah, 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 blah. It feels very transactional. It's almost like you just bought an iPhone. But what if you could make it feel so that when employees are working with and for you, they feel like they just bought into an experience? And that's what the world's top organizations around the world are doing. And the challenge is that there's only very few companies in this space who are doing that. I learned something absolutely insane today. 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed to it. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It'll take you just 1 second and it helps the channel quite a bit. You'll also get access to new videos when they are released. Hit that subscribe button, and now let's get back to the content. Now, one of the things that I was actually very pleasantly surprised by, when I first wrote about employee experience, the book came out in 2017. So it's 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago. By the time the new book comes out, it'll be 8-9 years. And if you look at where employee experience was in 2017 versus where it is now, we've seen a huge shift, a huge change. We're seeing organizations making very heavy investments in employee experience, which is, of course, fantastic. And we're seeing more people with the employee experience job title. We're seeing more organizations actually use the phrase and the terminology employee experience, not just internally, but also publicly. Whether you look at shareholder statements, whether you look at financial results, we're seeing companies talk about employee experience much more, which I think is very, very exciting. And time again, whenever I talk to business leaders, I still keep hearing that the number one business and talent trend going forward is employee experience. I think post-pandemic, we really start to see more of a jump, more of an increase in this, and also in things related to employee experience like employee engagement as well. But the fact that we're moving in such a rapid upward trajectory, I think is a great thing, not just for HR teams and organizations, but also for employees as well. So how did we actually get to where we are now? And I think this is a very interesting evolution that we've seen. And we've been kind of pushing between employee engagement and experience, but I think now we're moving more from the engagement to the experience piece. So we started off in utility. And utility used to be about just giving employees the bare bone essential tools they need to get their jobs done. A computer, a laptop, a desk, whatever it might be. It's just the bare bone essential tools that you need to get your job done. So you get hired, you're given your tools and resources, go. Don't bother me. Don't ask any questions. I don't care about engagement. Your well-being is not a concern or a priority. I'm paying you, go do a job. That's what it was like. Then we moved into this world of productivity. And productivity was, well, you're doing your job, but how do I get you to be more productive, more efficient? How do you do these things faster, better? And there was actually a period of time where employees would be timed with stopwatches by their managers. And this was, obviously before laptops, before the internet, before computers, where employees were, for example, on an assembly line, and you would have managers who would literally stand behind them with a stopwatch, try to shave a couple seconds off of the length it took them to do a particular task. And even today, right, we still talk a lot about productivity, but we're always trying to get employees to do more with less, try to get them to be more efficient, more productive, faster. And that was a huge, huge concern, a huge priority, 60s, 70s, 80s, 50s. Then we moved into what I like to think of as this era of enlightenment when we think about, corporate culture and employees. And that was the realm of employee engagement. And employee engagement was really about how do we make employees happy so that they can perform better? How do we make an employee smile when they show up to work? And this is where we started to invest in all sorts of programs. This is when we started to do free food and massages and hot yoga and anything and everything that you can think of. This is where the concept of flexible work was first introduced. This is where we created, in a sense, kind of like Pinocchio's Island for a lot of organizations. And we'll talk about the challenge of that in just a minute. And now I think we're kind of at that cusp between employee engagement and employee experience. And we're moving more into how do we create an environment where employees actually want to show up instead of need to show up. And it's not so much about how do we make employees happy, it's about how do we create an environment where we have a mutual exchange of value. But I think we're now in this world where we're realizing, hey, wait a minute. It's not just about engagement. It's about changing the core workplace practices of our company. It's about really making these deep, substantial changes to how work gets done. What does it mean to be an employee? What does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be an organization? What does it mean to work? And we're questioning these very basic, fundamental things. And that, I think, is the core of what employee experience is all about. Now, I mentioned this idea of engagement and what a lot of companies have been doing. And I honestly really believe that we have gone too far. Whether we look at well-being programs and engagement programs, we've created an environment inside of a lot of companies around the world where we leave our workplace practices as they are, but then we sprinkle in all these things on top to distract employees from the reality of what it's like to work there. And the reason why this is a problem, and the way that this started is, employees, when they show up to work on day one, nobody ever says, oh, this place is terrible. They show up to work genuinely excited to be there, to make an impact and to make a difference. And then through outdated office politics and bureaucracy and a hierarchy and you name it, their engagement, their satisfaction goes down. And then what do? We get together our HR teams and we say, hey, who has a good idea of how we can boost our employee engagement inside of our company? And then somebody raises their hand and they say, hey, why don't we give them hot yoga on Tuesdays? And somebody says, oh, that's a good idea. Let's give employees hot yoga. We give employees hot yoga and guess what? Their satisfaction goes up. And then employees get used to it. And then they show up to work and they say, yeah, we're kind of used to hot yoga, right? The transaction, remember I talked about with the iPhone? And then they say, well, what else you got? And then we turn to HR and we say, hey, they don't care about hot yoga anymore. What else can we do? Somebody says, let's give them free food on Fridays. Great. We give them free food. Engagement goes back up again. And you can kind of see where I'm going with this. This is called the hedonic treadmill. In other words, we're not actually making any changes to the company, but really all we're doing is we're throwing these things on top so that when employees become unhappy, we can boost them with an adrenaline shot. It's like a stab to the arm. We give them this boost. They wake up a little bit. They get more engaged. Then the adrenaline shot wears off and they get a little more down and blah, through the office politics and bureaucracy. Then we give them another shot and they wake up again. And this is a cycle that we see inside of our organizations. And I believe that we're actually doing too much. And I know this is going to be contrary to what you hear from a lot of people. Feel free to challenge me in the questions. I think we're doing too much with employee engagement programs, too much with well-being programs. There are a lot of books that have come out, whether you look at The Anxious Generation, whether you look at Bad Therapy. These are the names of the books by Abigail Schreier, Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist, and there have been several others. The challenge that we're starting to see, and we see this in our parenting, where we do too much for our kids. We outsource our parenting to therapists who are very quick to put kids on medication, very quick to diagnose kids, and we coddle kids. This is the challenge that a lot of parents are faced with today. And I think we're seeing this make its way inside of our organizations. We're seeing the same pattern make its way inside of our organizations where companies feel like they have to do everything and anything for their employees. We have to give them well-being. We have to give them financial training. We have to give them perks. We have to give them benefits. We have to give them credit to spend on whatever they want. We have to give them bonuses. We have to give them salary increases every year. And we've ballooned and created these organizations that are no longer sustainable. And this is very consistent from a lot of the HR executives that I've been interviewing and speaking with. So in other words, what we're seeing is that employees fundamentally care about the core aspects of work, meaning give employees good pay, give them a leader who's going to be a coach and a mentor for them, give them advancement and growth opportunities, give them learning and training and development. If you do those things as the core, you will create an amazing employee experience, and the other stuff is just the icing on top of the cake. But instead, we're viewing the icing as the cake, and it's not proving to be a very effective strategy for organizations around the world. And I think a lot of the data actually reflects that.